In the international system today, regional systems of cooperation and organisation are important. The most important example of this is the European Union. East Asia is not as established or politically organised as the EU, but it still makes sense to also think of it as a region. The importance of regions is a little surprising because globalisation has been the dominant discourse. But historically, interaction with neighbours has always been important, mainly because of geography. Improvements in transport and communication have made the world more integrated. However, despite changes in forms of political and economic order, states are still the most important form of political organisation, and they are more and more looking for opportunities of regional rather than global cooperation. So how can we explain this? After World War II, people became interested in regionalism for theoretical and for policy-making reasons. The development of the EU especially raised interest and caused people to try to copy its success. To understand the reasons for the EU's creation, we need to consider the geopolitical circumstances. The EU was formed to avoid future wars after the devastation of World War I and World War II. But at the time, the US also needed a capitalist buffer in Western Europe against the communist expansion of the Soviet Union. We need to also consider geopolitics in the regional development of East Asia, because there have been obstacles. The region was ideologically divided after World War II, which meant regional cooperation was impossible. In conventional international relations theory, known as realism, the world order is seen as anarchical, with self-interested states constantly struggling for survival. However, this made it difficult to understand the success of the EU, where states were cooperating. The first wave of regionalist theorizing after World War II was functionalist. In contrast to realism, where states are constantly struggling against each other, functionalism says that states have some common interests. Individual state sovereignty is weakening as states become more globally integrated. In the EU's development, policymakers cooperated to create new regional institutions for mutual benefit. Functionalism was good at describing how processes work, but less good at explaining how they happened in the first place. In recent years, there has been new interest in regionalism for a number of reasons. The end of the Cold War meant the decentralization of the international system. It was no longer ideologically divided between the capitalist West, centered on the US, and the communist East, centered on the Soviet Union. Economic and security matters are becoming more organized on a regional basis, for example, NATO and NAFTA. The early success of the EU provided an example for other regions to try to emulate, for example, NAFTA, Mercosur, APEC. For some parts of the world, regionalism was a way to protect themselves against some of the negative effects of globalization.